And welcome to the October 16, 2018 County Commission meeting. I'd remind you to silence your cell phones. The meeting documents are on the end of the counter in the white binder. And if you need a listening device, Craig is in the front row and he could help you with that. We'll move on to routine business. Item number 1 is consider a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
A motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion passes unanimously. Item number 2 is approve the commission meeting minutes from October 9, 2018.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion passes unanimously. Item number 3 is bills to be paid in the amount of $3,747,363.35.
Pay the bills.
Second.
Second, any comments? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion passes unanimously. Item number 4 is reports. Item A is Register of Deeds, official statement of revenue collected for September 2018. Item B is Human Services 2018 third quarter report for Minnehaha County and Lincoln Counties. Item C is Minnehaha County Public Defenders Advisory Board minutes from May 2018. And item D is Minnehaha County Regional Juvenile Detention Center report for August 2018, and those are all on file at the auditor's office.
Commissioner Heiberger?
Yes.
Jamie's here, so I'm wondering if you could give a little bit
Yep.
of comments on his report.
Yep, that'd be great. Sorry, Jamie, I'm just reading.
That's fine.
right
This-
ahead.
This is kind of a last minute thing. Commissioner Bender had some questions on the supportive programs data, so we thought we'd provide a little bit of detail on that for you here.
Thank you, Jamie.
You bet. Thank you for the feedback. So we have, in supportive programs, we have 3 programs. One is Synergy, and Synergy are case managers that provide direct services to homeless families. And then we have Alliance, where case managers in that program provide direct services to incarcerated individuals. And then we have Safe Home, and we have case managers in that program that provide direct services to chronically homeless individuals. So when you look at that data report on the supportive programs, when we're talking about creating programs, the number of programs created, for Alliance, for instance, that would mean the number of new individuals that are incarcerated that those case managers are providing direct services to during that period. So for Synergy, it would be the number of new homeless families that the case managers are providing direct services to for that period. And then Safe Home, the number of new chronic homeless individuals that are being provided with services by the case managers in that program. So that kind of explains what the new number, or new programs created means there. And, and we have Brett Johnson here as well from Human Services, and maybe he can explain what it means. He is the manager for Synergy and Alliance programs, so maybe he could explain a little bit what that means in terms of creating programs versus being enrolled in the programs. So.
Yeah, I don't know if, do you have a way to reference this report? I think it's all the way to the bottom of this one.
Yeah, there it is.
And I
There it
think
is.
when Commissioner Bender reached out to us, there's certainly questions as to what do these numbers mean? And when we reviewed that yesterday, we certainly took that into consideration and wanted to hopefully clarify that in future reports. So like Jamie was saying, the number of programs created, that's essentially like with Alliance, 42, that's essentially 42 clients that were referred to Alliance that my staff actually met with. And a majority of the referrals that we get, we actually meet with them in the jail. And so and then the next line down, which says number of programs enrolled within that date range, which is 0, essentially that means that every single person that we met with in the jail probably hasn't gotten out of jail yet, because we don't want to enroll them as a participant until they're actually getting out of jail. It just helps clarify a little bit for us their interest and their ability to follow through and be enrolled in the program. So it's more like my case managers are doing a lot of service for them while they're in the jail, and then once they get out, then we start tracking them as an enrolled participant in the program. So I don't know if that'll clarify that a little bit. And when Jamie and I and Carrie met yesterday, we thought, you know what, we want to do a little bit more clarification on that report, so it's a little more chronological for you. That report is a little discombobulated, quite honestly, so we're going to make some changes so it makes a little more sense for you next quarter. When we talk about the programs created for Synergy, obviously those are not cases that are actually in the jail. Homeless families are referred to Synergy through a number of ways. They might present at our Human Services office as a homeless family asking for assistance with renter deposit, eviction prevention, that sort of thing, or they're requesting shelter, whether that's actually at a homeless shelter or if they're asking to be put in a motel. And so our staff essentially meet with the homeless families when they present there, or if they're just referred over to our office for case management services. One thing to clarify with that, those numbers certainly are pretty big during this quarter, and a lot of that has to do with the fact that it's the end of summer, school is starting, and so we get an influx of homeless families that come to town or are certainly in movement trying to get their kids enrolled in school and that sort of thing. So usually when you look at numbers during this quarter versus other quarters for Synergy, those numbers increase dramatically. And I think Jamie had actually alluded to that a little bit just overall with the Human Services numbers early on in the narrative, so.
Okay, so it would be, so your goal is that next quarter, when we get this, that you'll provide a little more substance so we can kind of understand better. So in Synergy, for example, it would be helpful if you could show how those numbers relate to each other,
Yep.
you know, so that we can kind of have a better feel
Yep.
for the hard work you guys are doing. I appreciate these reports and getting them, and I did read through them, and I just stumbled on this page a little bit.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, and I think if we do this a little more chronologically, where it shows the number of programs that were enrolled at the beginning of this date range, that certainly should be the first number you see, and then add on to that the number of referrals and families that they've met with, and then if it's a little more chronological, hopefully that'll make a lot more sense to you.
And we'll rework these labels so that it's more clear, you know, and what those mean and what they're pertaining to.
Jamie, I'm wondering, so the number of programs created, is that really just initial contact with family member, initial contact with client in the jail? Is that really what that means?
Yeah.
Yep.
So it's just initial contact?
And the range
Yep.
of services could be from, you know, just having an interview with them or
Right.
spending a couple days with them to months of ongoing case management services once they get enrolled. If they get enrolled, they get to a point of getting enrolled and need that level of services. So, that doesn't tell us how much time the case manager spent with the individuals or families though. But that's why when you get the annual report, there's there's additional data on there, additional detail that has basically the minutes. And there's pie charts that shows how many minutes each program spent and how many hours were spent on direct service with individuals and with families and things. And so that's kind of how the managers will track. We get additional reports even beyond that with more detail that clarify the number of minutes and hours that each case manager spent during a period with direct services for individuals or families, okay? So that kind of helps us to figure out where they're spending their time and how they're spending it, because then on the reports too, there's a pie chart that shows you how that time is spent in terms of what percentage was during office visits versus phone calls, et cetera.
So, and then is there any data that how do we measure the outcomes? Is there any data that you can provide us that shows if, you know, a homeless family was actually still housed a year later? Or, it would be helpful if we could then use this data to help us to measure outcomes so we can see.
We have a couple pages of, let's call it work orders or update reports that need to be completed yet. So it's kind of in its infancy. I mean, it's an ongoing process of getting reports completed. So we have quite a few reports, but we have a lot more that need to be made through IT. Unfortunately, we have one person in IT that does the coding, and programming for these reports. And he's got several county departments that he's coding for. So it's behind, but we do have reports slated for that. And we do have the ability to report on that information from the system, from our system that was developed by IT. So for instance, the caseworkers or case managers for Synergy, for instance, that work with the homeless families, they have it in the system to where they do and check off 30-day follow-ups, 60-day follow-ups, 90-day follow-ups, and then put the statuses at that time in the system. So we can generate reports. Eventually, when we add these additional reports in, we'll be able to tell what was going on at those points. So that's up and coming as we add additional reports over the next year or two and stuff. We'll get to that, but we do have a couple pages of stuff that have not been done yet that I'm currently working on with IT, and we go back and forth and update that when we can. So. And then we have, we track it differently with the other, so we have the medical department and emergency services, right, on the other side. So that's not supportive services. Because not everybody needs case management services or more long-term assistance. They may just come in and make an application, may just have stumbled once, and fall in hard times, and maybe they just needed to make one application and then we never see them again, So it was an application for assistance or aid, through emergency services, or maybe they had a hospital admit and it was a one time and that's it. Well, then how we track that is applications. So, because we know that every application that a caseworker sees in either medical or emergency services takes on average about a half hour. So if an individual, if a caseworker seeing 10 applications, for instance, we know they spent 5 hours, handling direct services for emergency services or medical. So that's how we track those as application numbers and the number of requests under those applications.
Yeah, I can understand that's a little more concrete data. It is just, we're all trying to get our arms around. I mean, I think intuitively, these programs, Alliance, Synergy, Safe Home, seem like they are going to have great impact. It's hard measuring that impact, and that's what we struggle with, and are just looking for you to provide us whatever help you can on that. So
It is. I appreciate it. And I think Jeff was here recently where he did some reports on Safe Home.
Yep.
And what the savings were in that program in terms of jail and detox visits and that type of thing. And we have more reports like that up and coming for Synergy and Alliance as we're able to add those additional reports via IT.
okay.
Dean, did you have a comment? Commissioner Karski?
Just thinking out loud here, and correct me if my assumptions are wrong, but outside of Safe Home, a lot of these programs are individual or single contacts for the most part, or are a lot of them ongoing? Give me kind of a percentage. How many are just kind of one-time contacts?
Probably, Commissioner Karski, I wouldn't necessarily be able to speak to how many, like if 50% necessarily or not, but our plan is in both programs to provide ongoing case management to a majority of the individuals or families that are referred to the program.
Okay.
Certainly both programs are voluntary. Nobody's forcing them to follow through with that, but we certainly want to make sure that they're getting their needs met. And so, as Jamie was saying, these reports obviously don't tell you the amount of effort and time that goes into an individual or a family.
No.
And certainly with the ones that are coming out of the jail that we end up working with that might have some significant mental health or developmental disabilities or significant medical concerns, those certainly take a lot more time. But we do have a lot of clients, I would say probably about 50%, that might come in, see us one time, and fall off the radar, and we don't necessarily know where to look for them. Similar thing with the homeless families, but they're a little more complicated, and it's certainly important that we make sure that the families that have children are taken care of. So we certainly probably have our finger on the pulse of the families a little bit better, just because it's really important that we make sure that those kids are safe and in a good place. But we do have plenty of them that it might be just a one-time thing. That's never the intention. It certainly boils down to the ability for that individual or that family to follow through with services. And we certainly have an outreach component to both programs, well, all three programs, even with Safe Home. If they don't show up and we know that it's, that we really want to make sure they get connected to the right services, that we're doing outreach and doing our due diligence to find them and make sure that things are going okay, so.
Commissioner Barth?
You know, I really appreciate the explanation on the report today, and Commissioner Bender is exactly right that it would be nice if we could quantify these things a little bit more specifically. Clearly, people in jail getting out of jail are more likely to become homeless and go back to jail, and you know, there are probably some very good results that are saving us money. In the community, campaigning for office, people are always saying, why are we building that jail, and why aren't we doing anything else? And we are doing other things, and it's, I think that those same people don't want to hear we have a program. I don't know what they want, but they want to hear that we're not putting people in jail, and you know, whether it's psychiatric or physical health, brain damage, you know, these alternatives are wonderful, and I think you know, the hazards to folks coming out, especially after some weeks in jail, must be amazing to try to contend with your family moved away while you were in jail or whatever, and now you're on the street with some new friends that are getting you in trouble. But statistics on some of these things that we can measure would be very helpful. Thank you.
I'd say, too, that, you know, I'm jumping on the bandwagon, that data is extremely important to going forward and making sure. And in the past, we have hired contracted help for the IT department to build programs that we needed, and if there's really seriously, they don't have the time to do it, then there's got to be a plan going forward, and I think that your department should look at that and be talking to IT about, is there, what type of data do you need captured, and what is the issue here, and do we have to figure out a way to contract some help to get that program written? I have no idea, but we have done it in the past, so. Okay, yeah, thanks, guys.
Thank you.
And those reports are on file at the auditor's office, if anyone wants to dig into those a little closer.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Item number 5 is personnel actions. Item A is consider a motion to approve the routine personnel actions.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion passes unanimously. Item number 6 is abatements recommended for approval. There are none. Item number 7 is notices and requests. There are none. Item number 8 is planning and zoning notices. There are none. Item number 9 is petition for compromise of lien. There are none. Next, we have opportunity for public comment. If there's anyone who would like to speak on anything that is not on today's agenda, today would be your time, or now would be your time. So seeing no one moving, we will go on to regular business. Item number 9 is a public hearing to consider special events on sale wine retail license, special event off-sale packaged wine license, and special event consume and blend license for Wild Prairie Winery. Olivia.
Yes, Wild Prairie Winery provides wine and wine samples at the Shimmer and Shop Holiday Podtacular every year, so this is their annual application to do so. It's taking place on December 14th, 2018. I have sent the application to the Sheriff's Department, State's Attorney's Office, and Planning and Zoning Department. I did speak with Maggie briefly about this, so Maggie, that's up to you if you have anything. Okay, and I did not receive any concerns from the Sheriff's or Planning Department.
So this is a public hearing. Is there anyone here that would like to speak in favor of this liquor license, of this retail license, special license? Is there anyone who wants to speak opposed to it? Okay, seeing none, I would look for action from the commission.
Motion to approve?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All those in, oh, we have to roll call vote, please.
Yes. Barth?
Aye.
Bender?
Aye.
Benega? Oh, sorry, he's not here. Karski?
Yes.
Heiberger?
Aye, motion passes unanimously. Item number 11 is a public hearing and second reading to consider an ordinance amendments to 18-02 changes for CAFO's regulations. Kevin Hookman. Good morning, Kevin.
Good morning, Kevin Hookman, County Planning Department. As you noted, this is an ordinance amendment to change some parts of the CAFO regulations in the county. If you recall, in 2017, the county commission approved a fairly substantial CAFO amendments to the ordinance that changed a lot of the things throughout the ordinance. And since that time, we have had several applications that have gone through the planning department through the beginning to the end, and there's some minor things that were brought to our attention that could be adjusted. So these suggestions that have been made by both the applicants and by the planning commission themselves. And the planning commission directed staff to take a look at these and present those changes in an ordinance format. So the planning commission looked at them and reviewed them at the August 27th, 2018 planning commission meeting. At that time, the meeting was recommended for approval, or the ordinance was recommended for approval unanimously. And I have a really boring PowerPoint with just the text of the ordinance here. We can go through and I can show you the changes and why we made them. So this particular change is for the construction documents required once the CAFO is approved for construction. At the time that we adopted the ordinance, we were going through a process of creating a policy in the buildings with the building inspector to require engineering design for new buildings that are large. And the number of what size of building was kind of not established at the time of making this ordinance. So we chose 50 feet at the time of the ordinance, and then we established the number at 60 feet for the rest of the county ordinances, or for the rest of the building permits. So this change here, changing construction documents for engineering to 60 feet, is aligning at the rest of the policy of the county. Then the next part of the ordinance that it was changed refers to the requirements for landscaping. For a CAFO that is too close to their neighbor, they can opt to reduce their setbacks by meeting landscaping requirements. Previously, the ordinance required the landscaping to be designed by a professional landscape architect, and the applicants who have used that service have noticed that the landscape architects aren't necessarily trained in providing shelter belt coverage for agricultural uses. We have spoken with, this actually has more to do with the Minnehaha Conservation District, and worked with them to make some changes in this ordinance to better suit what would be more to both move forward with the ordinance, say when a tree dies, what do you do about it? We will replace it, and that the shelter belt overall needs 90% survivability. And then ultimately, then the conservation district is allowed to design the shelter belt for that setback reduction is the main change. Is there any questions about that?
Oh, Commissioner Karski? Excuse me.
Just on the engineering requirement, it says professional engineer. Should it say structural engineer, or are we concerned about that at all? I mean, a professional engineer could be a civil engineer without.
Something like that did come up at the planning commission meeting, and one of the commissioners who's worked with Henry Carlson Company noted that term professional engineer shouldn't be an issue with moving forward as how it's understood of who's designing the structures.
I suppose a professional engineer wouldn't sign off if they weren't qualified based on the structural side of it, so that makes sense. Okay, thank you.
All right, moving forward, and then the final change in the ordinance, there was some, the CAFO ordinance has always required a different set of mailing instructions to notify neighbors. The new ordinance change that happened a year ago required the mailing notifications to be sent certified mail and with return receipt. The applications that we received in the last year, that has caused quite a confusion among a couple of the applicants, in part because the general public doesn't know what a return receipt is. So they go to the post office and say, hey, I need certified mail, and they don't get that separate ticket. The other issues with the return receipt is that it costs a lot of money. When we're doing a half-mile setbacks or notice requirement, you're sending dozens of landowners within that setback at a cost of about $7 a letter. So some of the applicants were had problems with that. Then third is that the certified mail does require a signature to be picked up. And that was really what allowed staff to think that perhaps the certified mail requirement is enough, because we know somebody received the article of mail. We just don't know who picked it up, as the return receipt would allow us to see the exact signature. So that would be the difference.
Madam Chair,
Commissioner Barrett?
we've actually had issues where an applicant goes to the post office to do the mailing, and the post office clerk says, hey, this is, the other way is better. Don't, this is cheaper. Let's do it this way. So they send it out. We have the hearing, and we find out that the wrong letter was sent, and we had to defer action and make them send it out again. And additionally, everyone that was supposed to be mailed to was in the room. And so it's, anyway, we've kind of painted ourselves into a corner on this, so.
And so that would be the ordinance changes. If you have any questions for that.
Any questions for Kevin at this point? Okay, this is a public hearing. Is there anyone who would like to speak in support of this? Is there anyone who would like to speak against the ordinance changes? Okay, and I would look for a motion, and we'll have to have a roll call vote.
I'll make a motion and then I have a comment afterwards. I'll
Second.
make a motion.
I have a
to approve.
motion and a second with a comment from Commissioner Bender.
My comment is I have not had anybody approach me about these rules. When I visited with folks in the ag industry, they all thought they made perfect sense. You never know, the lack of attendance here this morning to talk about it, if that's, we can assume approval by that, or if it just signals apathy. It's always hard to tell. But generally, people who are in the ag industry are paying quite close attention to particularly CAFO rules. And so I feel comfortable that this has been adequately vetted out. There wasn't any issues on the Planning Commission. And so I feel like I appreciate your staff continuing to kind of hit a balance of common sense with these rules, but something that still protects the public and the ag producers. So that's my comment.
Okay, we have a motion and a second already, so we need a roll call vote.
Bender,
Yes.
Karski.
Yes.
Barth,
Aye.
Hiberger.
Aye, motion passes unanimously. Thank you, Kevin.
Thank you.
Item number 12 is consider a motion to approve a change order number 1 for the Juvenile Detention Center parking lot repairs. Mark Krenz, good morning, Mark.
Morning, Commission. Mark Krenz, Facilities Director. I'm here this morning requesting Commission approval for change order number 1 for the Juvenile Detention Center parking lot replacement in the amount of $3,100. This increase is due to the addition of a parking space, but also want to note that there was a valve box and curb stop replacement also in this change order. So with the $3,100 additional dollars, it brings the final contract price to $129,226. Are there any questions?
Are there any questions? The motion I will need would be a motion to approve, if that's where you're going, and that the change order meets the statutory requirements under 5-18B-19.
I'd
That's
make a
my
motion,
motion.
but it's too complicated.
I have a motion and I have a second from Jeff, who it's too complicated for. So all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you, Mark. Item number 13 is liaison reports. Are there any liaison reports? Commissioner Barth?
First of all, I want to say that I think that the reorganization with emergency management is going well. Then I would say also that I'm keeping an eye on the situation in Split Rock with the change in roads in front of those properties, and I've actually gotten the maps showing it that maybe we can look at next week or so. But I expect to be out there at a fire chiefs meeting on Wednesday, so,
Thank you.
although that's in Brandon.
Yep. Thank you, Commissioner Barth, for keeping track of that road issue. Commissioner Bender?
I just was going to give a brief update that a kind of a small group of people who met right after the Community Corrections Building had the fire met again yesterday, and we continue to be due diligence as we gather quotes as to what it would cost to repair that building and compare those costs versus what it might cost to continue to house inmates outside the county until such time as the addition is completed on or about May 31st of 2019. We have some additional information we're trying to gather both from cost of construction and from our insurance company, and we will be gathering again and then be bringing a recommendation forward as to how best to proceed. So I just want to let you know that that was in progress, and thank Mark Krins and Carol and the folks that are at the sheriff's office and the warden who's working really hard to manage that population and come up with creative ideas to kind of bridge the gap for us. So.
Thank you, Commissioner Barnder. Yesterday, Commissioner Karski and I attended a meeting with staff members and Stockwell Engineering and the Department of Veterans Association, a couple people to talk about the Veterans Memorial Cemeteries north of Sioux Falls and just the progress that they're making going forward. We kind of went through the permitting. Scott was there and talked about and Kevin, different permitting that they would need to move the project forward. And also talked a lot about the road issues. I had Highway Department there. And, I mean, some of the conversation was probably going to need grants in order to pave that road going forward, and what types of things would need to be done, and how does it affect the county, and who would take care of the road, and what would we do. So just a lot of questions, a lot of answers. Stockwell seems like they're well on the road of getting things figured out. So it was a good meeting. Do you have any additional comments on that?
Not on that. It was a great meeting. A lot of, for the right term, people that are truly involved in the process. I don't want to use the term players, just
lot
the
of
number
good
of
people
people
there.
that are involved in making it work and how quickly it is coming together too. So
Very quickly.
excited about that process. So before this meeting, Commissioner Bender and I had a public Defenders Advisory Board meeting. It started at 7:30, went till about 8:45. For the most part, routine business, talked about training, budget, that type of stuff. So just personnel, they're fully staffed. They will be adding 2 new attorneys with the new year. I'd say for the most part, business as expected or usual. So.
Thank you.
Madam Chair,
Commissioner Barrett?
I was impressed to see minutes from the Public Defenders Advisory Board. That's a step forward, I think. And I know the public advocate is still awaiting a judicial appointment to fill out their crew, since Dave Palmer left us, and I think Judge Long left us before he appointed someone new. But hopefully we'll be meeting in the near future with another member as well. Madam Chair, I wonder if you would want to comment on the planning and zoning issue that we had with the city.
No, we have a meeting next week that will be dealing with that again, and so we will be moving forward with that
Okay.
event center that was to the
Heard.
west of Sioux Falls, and so that will be next week's meeting, so at 5 o'clock at the city building. So, if there's no more liaison reports, we go to item number 14. Is there any new business? Item number 15, any old business? And then I would look for do we have exec session, Carol? Yes. Okay, I'd look for a motion to recess the commission meeting when we will be reconvening for exec session.
It's my motion.
Second.
And a second to recess. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion passes unanimously. We are recessed. 9:35.